Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve. Perfect timing like a Rolex. Good to be with you on this Wednesday evening, hot off a Thanksgiving break, only with one of my better halves today. I guess my better thirds, if you want to say it correctly. I guess, three legs of the tripod, as the movie The Girl Next Door once iterated. Dominic Guanzon here today, running the show, pushing the buttons, sliding the sliders like a true professional. A little last minute, our good friend Giuseppe, Joe Viso, unfortunately not able to make the show today. But we got Dom, no less. Dom, how are you doing today? Yes, he did. Okay, just extended an invite to our live viewers. Okay, our live viewers, not our retroactive viewers that are watching this, 10 minutes after it's published or 20 years after it's published, right? I mean 20 years after it's published. I mean, you guys are going to be on your what now? What, 18th, 19th wedding anniversary by that point, so that's bad. I was going to say your wedding at that point is the equivalent of Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, but the less said about that, the better. Yeah, very proud of you guys, you and your longtime girlfriend. Very excited for you two. Warmed my heart to hear that a couple of weeks ago. That was awesome news going right into Thanksgiving. So, I mean, I've told you everything off air, so you're not hearing any of this for the first time, but it's so beautiful when two great people find each other and come together. I couldn't be happier for you, my friend.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I like you both dearly. You guys have been not only, I would say, eminently supportive of my work for the last several years, but you've been on the front lines of it for the last, what now, 6 years,
Yeah,
5 years or so.
Yeah.
So you're in like Flynn, as the cool kids say. But yeah, so we're sans Joe tonight, but we're going to make it work. 2 reviews. And I want to start just by saying this real quick before we get into anything, is that I know that a couple hours before the show, I really did not get much time to read it or really have much access to it to have any kind of an opinion on it. But I do know that Alec Baldwin gave his first interview since the Rust shooting with New York Times. I saw that earlier today, but I didn't have time to read it. We're going to address that next week. If for nothing more than the fact that I think I speak for Dom when I say that we didn't have enough time to really dive into it and form a cogent, thoughtful, worth, articulating opinion on it. But I also want Joe to be present for it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree. Apparently he claims that he didn't pull the trigger. That's a bold statement. So we'll find out. We'll see.
Ooh, that pull quote. I mean, I didn't even get to that part, so I'm not even gonna say anything more about that. But that pull, that's a dangerous pull quote right there.
Very much so.
I want to know the context of it before I opine on it. And I cannot imagine how aflame Twitter is this evening. But we will dive into that topic next week on the show, hopefully with Joe back, but we will get to that. That did not fly under our radar. But it's a back-to-back review show today, doubleheader of sorts today. Ghostbusters Afterlife, and we've got Tick, Tick, Boom. So we've got 2 big movies released over Thanksgiving, at least the week ahead of Thanksgiving. So there's quite a lot to talk about here between these movies. Ghostbusters Afterlife in theaters right now and doing very well at the box office, I'll add. And then Tick, Tick, Boom, which is still doing pretty well, I think, on Netflix. I don't think it's fallen out of the top 10, at least as of this show. I think it's actually done fairly well. So definitely, it was funny. And I hate to bring up this movie, but I will, is that not this one, but we got In the Heights back in June.
Yeah.
This was going to be a very musical year. We got In the Heights. And then it was a couple months, that kind of led us into the summer, movie season, return to movie theaters. Then we got The Abomination, the less said about it, the better, Dear Evan Hansen in September. I don't even want to go into that crap. Not until the worst movies of the year list, which we will tackle next month because it's already December 1st. But we got Dear Evan Hansen, and I thought Tick, Tick, Boom. And then we got West Side Story in a couple weeks. So it's like we were really hitting hard on the musical season right here. So it's kind of interesting how this movie Tick, Tick, Boom is kind of parlayed into the holidays on top of West Side Story coming out just a couple of weeks before Christmas. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that statement, but
no, it's crazy. I am loving this. Not to say that there's a big revival of musical movies, because they've been coming out part and parcel. But I think Tick, Tick, Boom combined with West Side Story, the big push for West Side Story, I think will kind of remind everyone, hey, yeah, movie musicals, those are cool, and it's not the knockoff ones on NBC, which, to be fair, a lot of people do work hard on those, but just the end result, partially because of the casting, but also partially because it's live TV. It's very difficult, so I sympathize. But we'll be getting some up in the game again, back to where it was before.
Yeah, I was out to dinner with a friend tonight too before the show, and I saw a preview on the TV behind us for Annie Live, which is happening pretty soon with Taraji P. Henson. And I admire the craft. I personally don't have any interest in it, but I admire the craft.
As long as the NBC sticks to like the classic Broadway stuff, then I think it could work. I don't know if the Jesus Christ Superstar worked that well. I think John Legend was fine, but the Pontius Pilate had some trouble. I forget who he was played by, but anyway.
No, it's one of those things too. It also reminds you that there's not much live TV these days outside of sports.
Yeah.
There's not much, it's slim pickings. But moreover, Ghostbusters Afterlife, might as well start with it because, like I said, 2 reviews today, no topics. We're just diving into the movies that, after a week off, gave these boys a week off. Hopefully they don't unionize on me and it makes things difficult. But, talking Ghostbusters Afterlife in theaters now, this is... I don't know if you want to call it Ghostbusters 3. I wouldn't, but at the point now, Ghostbusters 3 has become such a fabled idea. It's become synonymous with development hell of sequels. A movie that has been in production, or at least conceptualized, since the last Ghostbusters movie came out, Ghostbusters 2. It's been a talking point. We've got the Paul Feig movie, which stirred up a lot of controversy back in 2016, the Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig movie, which very few people even speak about these days. And now we have Ghostbusters Afterlife. It's got Finn Wolfhard in it from Stranger Things. You would know him from that. Also, both It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, both of those movies. You have Paul Rudd in this as well. And I don't want to spoil this. Here's the one thing I admire a lot about this movie is that I feel like, number one, I felt like I've seen the trailers since like Obama was president. I feel like this movie's been coming out for years. Like I've seen the same trailer for this movie time and time again, but they did a really good job. And I don't know if we want to bring it up on the show. I'm kind of leaving it at your discretion, Dom. You get to be the person to say this or spoil it rather. The marketing did such a really exquisite job, not ruining the connection to the original Ghostbusters, who do make an appearance in this movie. They did such a very good job with all the time that passed, they could have easily revealed it, but they didn't. And I respect the hell out of that. And I didn't mention it in my review at stevepulaski.com, but I don't want to mention it really here, the connection as to why we're focusing on these characters, because I think it's very delicately and beautifully handled. It's one of the things this movie has going for it. But the original Ghostbusters do make an appearance in this.
Yeah, I don't think that's unless you had zero thought at all about, or like didn't even know this was a movie, then you pretty much saw that coming. Actually, even in the middle of the movie, you could probably see it coming. But regardless, yeah, I actually was able to avoid, not even through trying, but was able to avoid most of the, I think, the marketing and trailers for it. What movies did you see the trailer for this when you saw this in the theaters? Did you see, like, because I don't remember seeing much of this at all in terms of trailers. So I think I had the opposite experience of you in terms of marketing.
I saw this. I'm trying to think. I know I saw it before I saw Spirit Untamed. I remember that, which nobody saw in theaters, so that's kind of irrelevant. I go to the movies so much, and I also go to smaller theaters as well. I believe it came before The Conjuring as well. The Devil Made Me Do It, when I did see that in theaters. I think it came before Jungle Cruise, I want to say. I've seen this trailer, though. Like, I can think on like one hand the amount of trailers I've seen over and over again just because they've been teased so much. And two of the trailers that come to mind right now are Ghostbusters Afterlife. I feel like I've seen that trailer 8 times over. And I remember when Zero Dark 30 came out, I saw that trailer. Had to be a dozen times.
For Ghostbusters Afterlife? This movie?
Yes, I'm serious.
Zero Dark 30?
Those two movies, I've seen these trailers for these movies. I feel like they were coming out for like a year and a half in advance. And I know it, like I said, it's all relative to a personal experience, but these are the two trailers that I feel like I've seen the most in my entire life.
Well, I know Zero Dark 30 came out like 30 seconds after they actually got Osama bin Laden, so I don't know, but yeah, it's
I saw that movie because I remember that was the year that like it came out around Oscar season, like in December, I want to say.
So it's perfect.
So like every and you know, at the end of the year, all these adult dramas come out. So like they were showing it before every single adult drama. Like I think Our Brand is Crisis was one of them that I saw it before. It was just, I could repeat a good amount of that trailer back in the day when I was in theaters to myself and my mother. I could repeat a good amount of that trailer, but that's neither here nor there. Ghostbusters Afterlife, long build up to this. This is a movie. I'm going to start by saying this, and I don't know if this is going to set the tone. I have no idea what you're going to make of this movie, Dom, and I'm excited for that. But this movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife, it's really tailor-made, I think, for the crowd who makes YouTube compilations with titles like Things You Missed in the New Ghostbusters Movie and all these Easter eggs. This movie is one giant Easter egg hunt. And I'm not going to say it's not entertaining. I'm not going to say it's not fun in some aspects, but it is nothing to write home about. I'll say that. It's nothing to write home about. I don't think it plunges to the juvenile depths of Jumanji, but there is not a lot of this movie that I feel like was very good or very well developed, given the time that was spent in conceptualizing a third installment to the Ghostbusters, because that's what this movie ultimately is. I don't know if we want to think of it as Ghostbusters 3, but it is a sequel. It is billed a sequel to Ghostbusters 1 and 2. I do not find a lot of this to write home about, and I think where this movie really gets things wrong is in the details, and I'll table that for later on in the review. What say you?
I think I can say that this is Ghostbusters 3. I know literally it's not, but like it can be considered a Ghostbusters 3 just because it pulls enough of those plot threads close enough. This movie did the right move for what it was going for, which I think it accomplished. For what it was going for, I think it was fantastically accomplished. The end result as a movie, we'll get into that, I think, a bit too. And let me say, I think I liked it more than you did, but that, let me ask you this. What's your connection to Ghostbusters 1 and 2? What are your thoughts on them? Like, do you love those movies? Did you like watch a lot of them growing up or no?
I didn't see Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters, until I want to say I was about 13. So I
Okay.
didn't grow up with it. My parents both are not very what you would call movie buffs. I
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
stumbled into this whole thing on my own. I've seen Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters, I think 3 times. Once in the theater. I did see it on the 25th anniversary. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. But I like the original quite a bit. And I like the story behind the original, like, how it got made and really how it was billed more as toward like an adult skewing comedy. And it kind of picked up like kid audiences around the way. I've only seen Ghostbusters 2 once. And I like a lot of elements of it, but I almost have to rewatch it before I've never reviewed it. I've never reviewed Ghostbusters 2. I just haven't seen it within the last, I want to say 9 years. So my memory's foggy on it to begin with. I've never been a gatekeeper of this franchise, though. This is not my Clerks, as I would say. This is not some people's Star Wars, as you would say. No, I've really liked the original Ghostbusters. And I really love, the characters in it. I love the dynamic between the 4 leads, but it was never something that I thought was a pillar of, and I know I'm going against the culture over here, a pillar of 80s culture. It was never that to me. What about you?
I think I have seen less than you of 1 and 2. So I think I've seen 1 a couple times. Possibly I haven't even seen it in its entirety. It's, again, like many, if you follow this Sleepless with Steve program, you notice I remember watching these movies too, like having watched them, but sometimes it's part and parcel. A lot of it might be on HBO or Showtime. This was like mid 2000s where I'm growing up and I'm like kind of watching these as they come in and out with commercials and stuff, maybe TBS with the same 3 commercials that they cycle in and out at all times. And I think I don't think I've actually seen Ghostbusters 2 straight up. I know there was a cartoon, but that didn't look appealing.
Now the cartoon was fun. I'm
Was
not
it?
going to lie. I haven't seen all of it. I've seen maybe like
Okay, fair enough. I can't
10,
judge.
15 episodes. The cartoon was pretty fun.
Okay.
Was not high art, but it was fun Saturday morning animation.
And apparently there was a video game that actually did have Harold Ramis before he passed away. And
Yes.
apparently Ghostbusters fans are like, this is our 3. Like, this video game is our 3.
And again, I just talked about the movies. I did play the Ghostbusters game on Xbox.
Okay.
I did. And you know what the cool part about that game was? Dan Aykroyd even said that game, first off, the game was really fun. It got very hard at some parts, but it was very fun. I don't think I ever beat it. But the thing with Ghostbusters, the video game, the Xbox game, was that Aykroyd came out and said that game took a lot of the scenes, not only from the original movie, they rehashed a few scenes from the movie,
Sure.
but it took a lot out of the undeveloped original Ghostbusters 3 Hellbent screenplay.
That's awesome.
And that was fun because there was a lot of that game that was like hellish, for lack of a better term,
right.
like Satan-esque, like doomy.
I mean, that's right up the alley. Yeah.
Sort of thing. It was a very fun game with a really good art style.
Okay, so with all of that, so I never actually played that, which is funny because I'm the video game guy. Maybe Joe would have played it. I'm curious, but
I'd love to know Joe's thoughts because I don't think I ever beat that game, but that game was fun. The levels I did play.
So let me say this: I think I'm even less of a Ghostbusters fan, or even have consumed less Ghostbusters content than you have, Steve.
Fair,
but I wound up loving this movie. And I think that's because I haven't had that much exposure to it. I'm kind of living these Ghostbusters moments for the first time through this movie, as opposed to really, really sitting down and really appreciating the original, which I think I just need to go back and watch the original. But something about this movie, there are some things that I got, like, okay, I get that even if I don't remember much of the original, I do know, like, okay, I know that is like I know it's a fan servicey thing. I know that the sound effects are the same sound effects as before, which, like, those proton pack sound effects are unbeatable. That's like iconic. That's like Star Wars level sound effects. I know, like, the big reveal of the Ecto-1, the car and stuff. It's like, okay, cool. They turn on the sirens and whatever. But really, a lot of the discovery of the characters here who are rediscovering the fun of being a Ghostbuster, like Finn and McKenna Grace. I am also I'm with them pretty much, and I'm not even rediscovering it. I am discovering it for the first time with them. So in that sense, I think I actually wound up enjoying this more than you in a funny way. And I was because I was having a thrill. I think I was able to hand wave a lot of the rushed detail and character development that kind of had with this. I think can we agree that the number one developed character here was probably McKenna Grace's Phoebe Spangler?
Agreed. Yeah.
I think that's even. I don't even know if there can be any argument there, but she was having so much fun. Despite being emotionally stunted because of, I think, a condition that she had. She never directly said it, but she kind of hinted strongly at it. Despite that, she was having so much fun, and she had so much charisma and so much pull and chemistry with Podcast. Oh my gosh, I forget that character's name. Goodness.
Yeah, there's a character named Podcast. There's the level of quality and detail in this movie too. Go on.
Yeah. Oh my God, can I not find the character name here? It's because they put the three. Oh my God.
You're talking Logan. Finn Wolfhard's character?
No. Logan Kim.
Oh, Logan Kim. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who plays Podcast.
Exactly. Those two, I was having so much fun with, to the point where I'm like, damn, do we even need Finn Wolfhard in this movie? Do we even need that character in this movie? Probably we did if I look at the script, but honestly, it's just like, I was really, really on that. And I was living those Ghostbuster moments for the first time, pretty much at the same time this character was. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, look, Carrie Coon, she's an awesome actor. I remember watching The Leftovers pretty much all the way through, and she's fantastic. Paul Rudd is Paul Rudd. You really can't go wrong with him unless you have a really weak script or you're really leaning on just, hey, comedian being comedian, which is the problem with 2016's Ghostbusters. I come to find out. But yeah, dude, even if it's retreading the old ground of the original, for me, I think I was just having fun with it. And I think I don't know, I'm really curious to see what a true Ghostbusters stan would think of this, because for me, it was.
You're not going to get it from me. You're not going to get it from me. I know.
But for me, I was being pretty cool with it. Now, Steve, I know that I don't know if it was like culture fatigue or like nerdism fatigue and like internet fatigue from everything, but you were a little down on it. Do you want to go into more detail on that?
I mean, there's, and you know what, and like I said, I'll say this too. Some people have said that I've been harsh on this movie in some ways, and I swear that it's not coming from a place of Ghostbuster gatekeeping. Right? It's really not. Okay?
I might even agree with you when you start getting into details here.
I mean, first off, I'm going to say this right now. People can back off and backpedal a little bit on Paul Rudd's presence in a movie, him being worthy of praise to begin with. Okay. First and foremost, he was almost useless in this movie.
Yeah, kind of.
He was almost useless. And like, and I'm starting to get to the point now, like where he's like Keanu Reeves, where the guy just shows up and looks handsome and looks made up, and all of a sudden people are worthy to praise his existence.
I would argue that.
I'm not saying you.
I can see how you say that, how they're in the same spectrum, but I think Paul Rudd has more going for him than Keanu. I'll say that. I think he can legitimately be. Well, I'm
not saying neither are bad actors. I'm not saying either of them are bad actors.
But they're
I'm
kind
not
of
saying
one
I do
note.
not like either of them, but they're very one note.
Sure.
And Paul Rudd in this movie, his only trait in this movie is apparently the only person who knows what happened in Manhattan 35 years ago.
Yeah,
the guy doesn't have not a telling character trait. Never mind the fact that Paul Rudd's presence completely obscures the fact. Here's the one thing I couldn't get past in this movie from the jump. Why does Phoebe have to go to summer school when she's goddamn brilliant? Why does she have to go to summer school? She is like the archetype of a precocious child who's brilliant. Why is she in summer school taught by Mr. Gruberson, Paul Rudd's character, for the first place?
I can explain this. I think
that's number one.
I think she's the kind of girl who, no, I take it back. I was going to say she's the kind of girl or kind of person who loves school so much, but then she straight up says, yeah, whatever, the public education system, because she's better than that. So you know what, never mind. I defeated my own argument.
Why would she go to a summer school class where all they do is show child's play? It don't make any sense.
No, they showed Cujo.
You know, and Cujo. Do you think a kid of that stature and that like cognizance would entertain a summer school like that? Moreover, Paul Rudd is a non-factor in this movie. He's a useless character. I mean, the other scene I didn't care for either, like that I just thought was a little absurd, was that when he's in the Walmart and the Stay Puft marshmallows come alive, there is nobody in this Walmart. It is worse than COVID population of a Walmart. Like, there is nobody in this Walmart. There's no other people.
They don't have in a small hick Midwestern town like that a group of kids, at least 7, hanging out in the parking lot at 11:47 at night.
Thank you. And then like even First off, like the point I'm making too, before I even go into what I was going to say, the point I'm making is that this is a movie that gets the details really wrong. That does not feel like it refined a lot of these scenes and these details particularly well. And it gets these moments that if you just pull back a little bit and think about it, like a lot of this, I'll be honest with you, didn't really register to me until I was kind of mulling over and note-taking my review before writing the review, like writing an outline, just thinking about and replaying certain scenes in my head. So you got those 2 scenes that I don't think are very good. And then you have, I mean, I like the fact, what I really like here is, and I know this seems like faint praise, but I really like the color palette of this movie.
No,
Eric Steelberg's a cinematographer.
That's very legit. Yeah.
Eric Steelberg's a cinematographer. Eric Steelberg has worked on a boatload of Jason Reitman movies, and it kind of like irks me. Jason Reitman, the director, also the son of Ivan Reitman, the director of the original Ghostbusters. It kind of irks me that this is like the first movie I feel like Jason Reitman is getting like mainstream recognition for since Juno. He directed Juno. He directed Up in the Air with George Clooney, Men, Women, and Children with Adam Sandler. Tully, I think he directed Tully too, the Charlize Theron movie. I think that was his last movie. I like Jason.
Wait,
Reitman
I'm sorry.
a lot.
Up in the Air, isn't that the one where it's like a big corporate airline shitting all over all its employees? Yeah, dude, that was a good movie.
Yes, and Clooney is the downsizer, the corporate downsizer of that movie. Yeah, I like that movie a lot. Up in the Air, that's a tremendous film. But Eric Steelberg, the cinematographer, I really like how they move this movie from like the city, the metropolitan, to like a very small town, USA. It's got a dusty desert color palette to it, which I think is attractive in a lot of ways too. I think it does a good job of getting us away from the metropolitan sheen of the original 2 movies and getting us into a totally different setting and kind of restabilizing things. Having said that, though, it's the most cliche town I've ever, like one of the most cliche towns I've seen in a movie, where it's like, this is what corporate studio heads think a small town is in America. Like, you got car hops that are straight out of American Graffiti. You got one Walmart, which apparently nobody goes to on a weekend evening. You know, it's the little things of this movie that bothered me. On top of the fact that a lot of this movie, it suffers from like the Force Awakens syndrome, where it spends so much time rehashing a lot of the first movie that it forgets to tell its own story. And it forgets to give us characters that we grab onto. And I think a lot of the people that are very high on this movie, at least certainly higher than I am, they're caught up in the fact that they saw the original Ghostbusters, including Harold Ramis, back together again. The gang is all back together. They're so caught up with that fact that they forget the fact that, you know, that final climax with the original Ghostbusters was nothing more than another kind of slam bang scene with a disinterested Bill Murray who looked like he had to be convinced 16 times over to be in this thing, because he was convinced 16 times over to be in this thing. That's the irksome part of this movie, is it felt like they were so busy paying homage, they forgot to really pave any sort of path of this movie, any sort of foundation that makes you interested in what this thing has to build.
No, they totally set it up for sequels. They left the road open well.
They
for
did,
sequels,
and I'm not ruling out the sequels to be good either.
But yeah, I mean, I think I kind of agree with you on that. If I were to watch it a second time, I'm pretty sure I'd start seeing that too. I do think that, like, who? Oh yeah, well, because I'm thinking now, like, who are some characters that I think you could cut out? Probably Paul Rudd, probably Finn Wolfhard. And
Podcast annoyed me. I'm sorry.
I can take.
He irked me.
No, I disagree. I think I kind of liked him. I think
he irked me. He's named Podcast for like that's another thing in this movie too. Like,
okay, question.
I don't know. He irritated me.
What's your thoughts on Short Round from Temple of Doom?
Short Round from Temple of Doom. It's been quite a while since.
Did you find him annoying, or was he the coolest character ever? Because I feel like there's a hard like between the two. There's nothing in between. I'm sorry. That's what I should say.
It's been a while since I've seen Temple of the Doom. Going back to it, I don't remember outright disliking him. I'll say that. I don't remember outright disliking him.
Because this podcast,
his name also wasn't for that era. For that era, he also wasn't named Mixtape either.
Podcast is objectively better than Short Round. There's no arguing this. Because
I'm going to write that down and revisit it.
He's got more. Well, because Short Round is literally just like shouting Dr. Jones in a broken English accent for like the entirety of the movie, and he's just shouting the whole time. Kind of like how the female love interest was for Dr. Jones in Temple of Doom was too.
Okay, now that you do say that, I do remember Short Round being kind of useless.
Okay, we're getting very, very detail oriented here, but that's kind of where the devil is. But also, I'll even say this: the reason why I think Podcast is cool is because he helps in kind of really capturing this 80s kind of story, which is kind of to its detriment too, because it's rehashing things in a very Force Awakens way. I can definitely see that. But for me, who was kind of having more fun with that, I should say I really enjoyed how, it was capturing the 80s, not full on like hyper matching the cinematography where, hey, this looks like a VHS. No. It's just capturing more of that sense of how the you've got like a single parent with family issues. You've got these kids without a father. You've got the plucky Asian best friend. You've got the teenager who's got a love interest and pursues that. Which I'll even say that plot point was kind of useless in and of itself. You could have removed that altogether and really hone in on McKenna Grace's Phoebe and the relationship with Carrie Coon and Egon. Just that core three of the lineage, of the direct lineage, because I know Finn Wolfhard is technically part of that lineage by extension, but really the movie was saying, hey, this is your new Egon Spengler, which in many cases can be a bad thing. I think I'll say this appreciatively, that in any other movie where a movie is so desperately saying, this is your new character for this, right? This is your new Egon Spengler. This is your new Indiana Jones for Shia LaBeouf for whatever. This is your new, so on and so forth. This movie, I think, handled it quite effectively in that, hey, we actually had this character freaking earn it. Like she went through a lot of trials and tribulations. She's smart and she can like figure it out. And she makes similar mistakes. And Steve, as you were saying, even though it retreads some of that same ground too much, there's definitely some trepidation in having kind of a bit of a bloat. It's not too bloated where it in terms of the characters, but there's some fat I think to have been trimmed here. But you keep podcast because I think that guy was cool.
I'm not going to discount Phoebe McKenna Grace. I think she's pretty good overall.
She carries this movie, in my opinion.
Of the
her and her mom.
Of the 3-4 new characters, including Carrie Coon's the mother, I think she is definitely the one that I think the movie should have more revolved around. I almost think that, like, I kind of agree with you in saying that, like, of the new characters, Finn Wolfhard's Trevor is the one I remember the least. And
he's not playing it bad at all. Finn is doing perfectly fine. It's just that the
No,
script gives them nothing of substance to do, or the plot.
I like the word that Courtney Howard used, a good film critic of mine, or a good film critic friend of mine too, and just a really good writer in general. She said that it's so consumed, this movie, with a lot of nostalgia that it essentially mimeographs the original in a lot of ways. Where, again, I go back to the Paul Rudd character, where a lot of his character is either to contextualize the past, or it's really to look at this PKE meter, look at the proton packs, and then you have the Ecto-1 and stuff. And here's the thing, and a buddy of mine helped me realize this in some sort of way too. Because at the end of the day, this movie's not going to make my worst list. I didn't outright hate it. I find it pretty mediocre, but at the same time, though, I understand, as much as I disagree with, and the hatred the Ghostbusters movie from 2016 got, okay, and coming out of the gate. And that movie was mostly fine, in my opinion. I think it kind of had slightly more of a reason to exist than this one. I think the problem with this film is that it feels like it has the obligation, and maybe it does. Reitman and the gang have to earn the fans' trust back after that movie, the bulk of whom did not even see the 2016 Ghostbusters movie, but that's neither here nor there. They have to earn the trust back from the fans.
That's true.
Who were so outraged by the 2.5-minute trailer of the Ghostbusters movie from 5 years ago that, like, they have to sort of Force Awakens the setup, and like Force Awakens regurgitated A New Hope in so many ways. This has to regurgitate the very original movie from 1984 in order to draw the fans back. And that means drawing on a lot of nostalgia and a lot of old recognizable items from the movie. And I just don't, for as long as we've had to wait for a true Ghostbusters 3, I'm not holding it to any particular high art. I'm just holding it to a standard above, again, an Easter egg hunt, a movie that is predicated upon the nostalgia and mimeographing the original movie. And that's my ultimate beef with this thing.
Yeah, I think the issue was with 2016. Let me say this with Ghostbusters 2016, because it's going to come up again in some capacity, hopefully not very much. But with all that, it's like, I think it's a two-way street. Obviously, people are just upset that women are in movies. But also, at the same time, the studio really was forcing, like, here's the same freaking thing all over again. But now we have women, and that makes it a great movie automatically. And it's like, okay, calm yourself down. You haven't broken the glass ceiling quite yet. But so it really is a two-way street. Ultimately, I think this movie does a better job of just making it feel more natural, however much it retreads, but it's I'll say I had a better time with this one than Ghostbusters 2, which I guess I never saw. But with this, hey, look,
we can go into final ratings here.
Yeah, we'll go to final ratings. Let me say, when Phoebe was looking at the commercial for the old Ghostbusters on her laptop, and it was like cutting back and forth between like a big moment there, I felt that moment. And I don't even remember much of the first one, but hey, you know what? Cutting back and hearing the sound of the, now when the original characters do show up in their old form, I wasn't feeling as much then. I think that was kind of all right, cool, whatever. But just that harken back to it, I think I can see how people are more hyped on this. Maybe to a fault, but I'm with it. I think this, for me personally, I think this etches just over into 3-star territory, just because I don't have much baggage with this franchise at all. I think it was fun. And again, McKenna Grace's Phoebe, and in a kind of an understated way, Carrie Coon as the mother. I think they hold the emotional weight here, the charisma of this movie. It's a good time.
I give it 2 out of 4 stars. Yeah. I was not as high. I love the descent that we have right now on the show. I'd love to know what Joe thinks of it. I really would. I wonder if he would be like the common denominator, or if he would default to 2.5 here. I don't know. But like, I don't know. This really isn't the Ghostbusters 3 that we deserve after a lot of a lot of broken promises and 3 decades of waiting. But ultimately, and again, I wasn't expecting that to begin with. I don't want to make it sound like, again, to think that Ghostbusters 3 Hellbent is ever going to get made. Go play the Xbox game. But ultimately, this is the movie to be expected in 2021. This is really the movie to be expected in the current year that's churned out by an industry that's obsessed with the past and a culture that really eats it up while emptily demanding original stories at the end of the day. I hold out hope that the sequels of this thing could be pretty good because they've laid I would say overall, they've laid something of an adequate foundation if they choose to focus on Phoebe and get rid of podcast. But that being said, if they focus on Phoebe more than anybody, I think the sequels will be interesting, and I wouldn't write those off. But as it stands right now, it didn't hit. It didn't hit for me.
I get
it's
that.
2 out of 4 stars. It's 2 out of 4 stars. And once again, not a Ghostbusters stand by any means. I'm a stand for good movies at the end of the day and the Clerks franchise. And with that, we move forward. I watched a Kevin Smith documentary, the movie Clerk, which is about Kevin Smith's career.
Oh my God.
I watched that the day before, I want to say Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And man, that was dope. That got me hyped. Clerks 3 2022, what you know about it. Anyway, Tick, Tick, Boom. Tick, Tick, Boom. Lin-Manuel Miranda directed musical now in some theaters. I think if you're so fortunate to live in those major metropolitans in the country. But for the bulk of us plebs, streaming on Netflix, which is where most of us have seen it. And I think it's doing pretty well on Netflix, which is cool because it is a pretty good movie. I'm going to start out by saying too, that like, I don't know, it's kind of a high bar to set. And I know I was higher on In the Heights than you two were, than you and Joe. But I don't know. It doesn't reach the height. It doesn't reach the heights of In the Heights, in my opinion. It does. No, it doesn't.
I'm surprised.
It's not as good as In the Heights.
Well, okay.
No.
You know what?
No way, no how.
I can see that because In the Heights is such.
It's an unfair comparison, but
to a degree, there's room obviously to compare, but like anything. But yeah, they are different because I think In the Heights is much more visually. It's like a flower bed, like a botanical garden visual kind of movie with so many styles and so many Latin, Afro-Cuban influence just bleeding out of that movie in such a beautiful way. It's got a more core, like family oriented kind of movie. Not to say that that's for families, but rather the heart of the movie is much more about family and stuff too. But this movie, Tick, Tick, Boom, and to an extent Rent, just because his work is not as diverse, or because he didn't have the chance, I should say. But Jonathan Larson's work, it's much more grounded. It's much grittier. It's darker, and it hits you in a different way. And actually,
versus Lin-Manuel Miranda, whose work is a lot more idealized.
Right. However, we should mention that Tick, Tick, Boom is directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda in his directorial debut. So for the fact that he can kind of do a switch, not too hard of a switch because it's still movie musical, and he's literally been in the stage play Tick, Tick, Boom. I think in 2014 he literally just straight up did it. But the fact that he didn't over-idealize this too much, there's a lot of ideals in this movie, don't get me wrong, but the fact that it retains that darkness to a pretty good degree is an accomplishment in and of itself. So Steve, I guess we'll go into general thoughts here first, right?
Yeah, I just want to start by saying this. I'm going to start this really the same way that I started my review of the movie, which you can read at stevepulaski.com. It's okay. You can do that. But you can't help but feel really a real sense of sadness when you read about the story of Jonathan Larson, the composer, the playwright. It was a story that I did not know. I knew a little bit about, just given Rent and the popularity of Rent before going into this movie, but reading more of it, obviously watching this movie and then reading more of it, he struggled for years to get that what's kind of the crux of this movie, Tick Tick Boom, his play Superbia, this Orwellian musical, really off the ground. He was the poster child of a starving artist in New York, who found success finally, tragically, when he put his pet project to bed after many rejections, pivoted to writing and producing Tick Tick Boom, this rock monologue as it's known, and then producing Rent. And then I'm going to use the one F-bomb we're allotted on the show every week, and then dies the fucking day it's set to start its preview run off Broadway at the age of 35. And I've said it on the show before, and I've lived it the last 5 months or so personally. Fair applies to Ferris wheels and funnel cakes. It does not apply to life. Okay, it doesn't. And the story of Jonathan Larson is tragic because he never got to see the fruits of his labor fully realized on this global scale that it has been. And for that, I'll say Tick Tick Boom, absolutely, I think does him justice. And maybe that's the end all be all at the end of the day. But I think between the clear affection Lin-Manuel Miranda has for him, after all, he was inspired greatly by Rent. I mean, he's talked about that openly. That
every musical since Rent has been inspired by Rent. It is really that much of a landmark of in the way Hamilton or West Side Story or
yes.
I'm missing so much more, but Rent is particularly for its moment in time in the 2000, early 2000, or was it late 90s? I forget.
I want to say early to mid 2000. The movie I remember came out in 2005. No, I take that back. It was the mid 90s. Okay.
So it was. You're right. Rent premiered in 1996 at the Theater Workshop in New York, and then it was adapted to film in 2005. So there's about a 9-year gap in between. But that actually perfectly encapsulates that moment in time, which is seemingly post-AIDS, but hell no, it's not. But also pre 9/11 gritty New York, kind of the last vestige of gritty New York, because everyone idealizes the 70s grittiness of New York. And then into the 80s where it's like Wall Street's bumping up on it. But then it's kind of like a lost decade in the 90s between here and there, between 9/11 and the flash of the 80s. But that's all history of New York stuff. Really, Rent and its style of music and the topics it can cover. And honestly, when I first I didn't know much about Jonathan Larson either. I should say Chelsea, my fiance, but Chelsea she's more of a musical person than I am. Probably between the three of us, more than the three of us, Joe included. So she was like, yeah, so much has been influenced by Rent and by extension Jonathan Larson, just to the point where when I first started hearing the music of Tick Tick Boom, I was like, this almost feels like parody, because it's like, it's in that style where it's like, yeah, it's like upbeat and it's like power vocals, and it's got that kind of rock guitar, but not too hard rock guitar, and the driving rock beat. And it's like, this almost feels like parody, something that South Park parodied on Team America with the AIDS song.
It suffers from the Godfather syndrome, as I like to say.
Exactly.
It suffers from the Godfather syndrome, where it's been parodied so much that you feel like, even though it's the first time seeing it, that you've seen it before.
It's like Dune, where it's like, this looks like Star Wars. This looks like, this and that. Like, no. This influenced everything that it wound up being influenced, that the movie wound up being influenced by, funny enough. So yeah, hearing that style almost brought me in for a chuckle, but it draws you in so darn well, I thought. And it has those elements, kind of like In the Heights did. It has those fantastical elements. It's not afraid to go off that, because it's not only doing straight up the Tick Tick Boom stage play to an extent, and then it goes off that book and into just straight up autobiography, but then it takes those fantastical elements where it's like, okay, we're doing this now, where we're swapping characters seemingly in the moment, the walls are coming down, and we're having this big musical moment. And that's just, you're using the medium effectively, and I'm very glad Miranda was able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like a lot of this. I like a lot of the technique around here. I would say that the thing that I would say offset me with the movie is
Mhm.
that I wonder if the urgency, because that's what this movie really is. It's very urgent, just given the setting, the backdrop, and everything. The fact that like we're butting up against, the title is in reference to Jonathan Larson's 30th birthday,
Right.
and all the time and sweat and tears he's poured into this project, Superbia, to get made and get seen and get on Broadway, and all the fact that his influences have all accomplished far greater things than he did well before 30. I think a lot of us can relate to that. You're closer to 30 than I am. Not to
This
put
is
more
really
pressure
like
on
if
you.
this is really if Bo Burnham wanted to make Inside not for Netflix but for Broadway. Pretty much, that's pretty much what it was in the '90s too.
Yeah. I was gonna say quite a lot of content here, but the thing with Tick Tick Boom though is I will say, and this is just opining here, is that I
Mm.
wonder if the urgency that's offered by the stage is more conducive to this breed of storytelling. I think the
Oh yeah.
main criticism I have with this movie is that there's so much style that overtakes this whole thing that it's easy to get lost in sort of the frenetic pace of the whole movie. And that was the thing that kind of maybe held me back from loving it as opposed to liking it, is that there's a lot of sentimentality here, and it's very hectic, and it's so wrapped up in haste that I think it loses I think Miranda sacrifices a lot of the qualities he has as a writer, as a composer, and really as even a director too, even though this is his feature directorial debut. That's inherent to a lot of his stories. I don't think the songs here carry the weight that they do. And I think a lot of the movie is just so caught up in style and this hectic pace that I don't think it really slows down to focus or narrow in really on what could be extremely special about it. That was the kind of crossroads I had. And I don't even know if I succinctly summarized that, but that is the closest I can come to putting my finger on why I liked but didn't love this thing.
It's hard exactly to say why because we haven't seen the we're not getting Tick Tick Boom, the stage musical, in its pure form. It is going from what I've read. It's going off and doing its own thing to a. Well, again, I can't judge. I think to a decent extent, and that's not even a style thing. I think it might be plot wise too. Again, condensing, kind of like how In the Heights. If you look at the book, and by book I mean like the stage book, and the movie, it cut out like a lot of songs and even characters as well, which I realized the film has to do. Right, you can't make
Sure.
Saving Private Ryan can't cover all 6 hours of the D-Day landings or all 12 hours of the D-Day landings. That was the longest day back in the 50s. But I will say that I think the end result of what we got here is probably as best as we can possibly get it, and I am very much okay with that. I think they as you mentioned at the very start, Steve, they did Jonathan Larson justice here. Did they get the pure essence of Tick Tick Boom? And could they have gone more into that? I think they probably could have gone even grittier, in my opinion. I don't know if maybe at that point you just want to redo the film production of Rent, but I think this is probably as good as we could have gotten, all things considered. Let me say, you can tell that so 5,000 Broadway Productions. 5,000 Broadway Productions is the production company that made this, and I believe owned or at least created by, I think owned by or partly owned by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And you can tell that this is the same production company that made In the Heights, because there is so much. If you put those movies side to side, the color palette, probably I can't tell for sure, but probably the filters and the lenses and everything, to the point where like the background green screen or blue screen that they were using is like that. Oh, that looks very In the Heights to me. What they were doing there, just small little detailed things. But honestly, again, I'm okay with it because really what we got here was it captured again, I'm not that well versed in Jonathan Larson's work. I don't think it's that hard of a project to do because he wasn't able to put out so much, but I thought it captured it. If Jonathan Larson was this frenetic, eclectic, almost mad genius of a writer who was not afraid to get down and dirty and gritty, then I think it did its work. I think mission accomplished there. Is there room for more of that?
It shows too. It shows too a lot of it, and maybe and this was an angle. I'm not going to go too deep in it. I talked more about it in my review. I'm not going to go too deep in it, but like, it irked me in a way, but I could see it like just as a character thing. But like, it shows you that you have to have an obsessive mindset, a really almost narcissistic mindset in order to make it in the Broadway sphere. And you know what? To end on a positive note, because like I said, far be it from me to really lambaste a movie for being good, not great, in my personal opinion. Damn it if Andrew Garfield isn't here. Isn't great here. It's taken us a while to get here, but I want to end on this. Andrew Garfield, there's a little bit of Oscar buzz for him right now. And I would not argue that he should absolutely be in consideration for a Best Actor nomination, because this guy, I mean, first off, it's like, I think a lot of us are like, holy crap, he can sing. He can sing, and
Chelsea
he can
was
sing
like,
extremely well.
Can Andrew Garfield sing? Like, he's taking on Jonathan freaking Larson's work. That's like, there's some power vocals in there, man. It's like, yeah, I guess he did, because that's like, this doesn't sound like a voice alike. It's right within his head voice. Like, that sounds like if Andrew Garfield could sing, and apparently he can. And like, I was looking up, I was like, surely he did other Broadway productions then, if he's doing this. No, he just learned to sing. He just learned to sing for this freaking movie. And I'm like, damn, that's impressive.
That is impressive as hell. And there's only a couple songs that really stood out to me personally. Like Why is one of them that I really liked in this movie. But Garfield body, don't act like bro ain't bodying these vocals over here. Okay. Like that is the thing that keeps you entrenched in it. If nothing else, is that Garfield really does. At some points, he really is kind of putting on, and I know Tick, Tick, Boom kind of was in some ways a one-man show, a rock monologue, but you know, he really, I mean, some scenes are just entirely him. And I'll end too on a positive note as well, beyond Garfield, is that the scene I really like the most in this movie, because they could have played it for laughs, but they didn't, is the scene when Garfield's Larson returns home and he sees that the electric company turned off, you know, his power and everything.
Yeah.
And he makes the phone call to the electric company and he says like something to the T of, you don't understand. I have a workshop. How could you? I have a workshop. And that scene is deathly serious. And it's sad. And it's heartbreaking. That was my favorite scene of the movie, because that was a scene that they could have really tonally screwed up. And I think because Lin-Manuel Miranda's behind the camera of this whole thing, Lin-Manuel Miranda's like, that isn't a joke. Like, that's real. That's
artist shit right there, man.
Like,
that's
he's
real
like,
artist stuff.
This is not a time. That's not a laughing matter. That's a life matter right there. And I love that scene. It's sad as it is. They nailed that scene. And that's the scene I think I'll remember about Tick, Tick, Boom, was that. And I think it helps when you get somebody like Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's so well versed and came, you know what I mean? Came from the mud in so many words. You see it in a scene like that and just how it's played deathly serious, because it ultimately is deathly serious.
And you know what? I'll end on this by saying what a fitting, almost like very indirect tribute, but tribute nonetheless to Stephen Sondheim. Like, just that legacy. Like, Sondheim is the character. I thought Sondheim was going to be like a small, you know, kind of cameo thing. And in fact, he literally does make a cameo in the voicemail. The voicemail, that is actually Stephen Sondheim speaking. But
okay,
no, he's actually like a very strong minor character, in the sense that this is like that is like the personification of, I mean, also in real life too. Stephen Sondheim was the personification of like every Broadway artist's dream. Once Sondheim made it and he's just banging out all those hits. My God, we could have done a whole segment on Stephen Sondheim. And, you know, we'll get another chance when West Side Story comes out, and we'll talk about that movie. Stephen Sondheim's very first musical was, I believe, West Side Story. And my God, what a legacy. And the way, hey, yo, shout out to longtime, oh my God, Bradley Whitford, longtime Aaron Sorkin collaborator, for really nailing that Stephen Sondheim look and presence of just being a big, not an asshole, but just more like, just the fact the film treats him like that he is the guy in the back of the room, literally the guy in the back of the room. You feel like all your hopes and dreams rest on the opinion of this guy. And so much of Broadway, I feel like, is like that. And well, they certainly portray that here. So my goodness, what could not have been more timely with the passing of the great Stephen Sondheim. So yeah, I guess I'll give my rating. This is an easy 3.5 out of 4 stars for me. This is a good time. The fact that we were able to get it in Netflix too, I hope it reaches a lot of people, because movie musical like West Side Story, I you know, that's actually a toss up for me whether it'll make its money or not, because it's, you know, it's Spielberg and West Side Story and the big Hollywood musical. But you know, there's COVID. Do movie musicals really do that well anymore? Yes and no. We'll you know,
Rent
In the Heights
flopped. I mean, different climate.
Oh,
but
Rent flopped hard. But In the Heights,
Rent flopped hard. In the Heights didn't do well.
No, it didn't. So it's actually 50-50. This, I knew like this wasn't going to do well only in the theaters, or would not have done well if it was only in the theaters, because it's a little more obscure. It's a musical about the guy who made the big musical. So it's like, it's very insider, very, you know, kind of like how film buffs, you know, they'll love La La Land, and all the musicals guys will love La La Land, but will it have the big appeal? Apparently that did. So, but yeah, dude. But you know, just on Andrew Garfield's, the big two things here is that Andrew Garfield's presence here and performance here is fantastic, and 2, this story got justice. This story did its subject matter justice, so, very much so, and even on those 2 merits, but so many other great work here. We didn't talk about the supporting cast, which did a hell of a good job, like Robin De Jesus and
Robin De Jesus was good.
Those guys were pulling their weight big time. I didn't even know they were going to go that hard into Jesus's character's story, but they freaking went there, probably because it probably happened a lot in real life too. But yeah, dude. So I'll just leave it there. 3.5 out of 4 stars. Steve, what say you?
Yeah, I end with this saying that, like, again, I couldn't get as wrapped up in the story, and I don't know if it's really so much as a flaw with the story or as a flaw with me personally, in that regard. I found like, and maybe it's just because, and I will say this too. This is a movie that I think I'll probably revisit in a little while, whether it be 6 months or a year from now, just given the deluge of musicals. I think we get a lot of musicals, and West Side Story's coming up again in a couple weeks too, where it's like that are so broad that they focus on a lot of different things, where here's a musical that's very insular. You know, even Dear Evan Hansen, as much as I hate bringing that movie up, showed the outer effects, the external effects of one person's action.
I think you love bringing that movie up. Don't kid yourself. But anyway, go on.
Horrible movie. I even think when I talked about like sort of like a little bit of the grating, maybe underlying narcissism of Larson's character in this movie in my review, I said like he's nowhere near as toxic as Evan Hansen, but admittedly very few of us are. But moreover though, you know, I like a lot of this movie, but there's just certain things of it that I wasn't a big fan of. I didn't find a lot of the songs as resonant as some of past Miranda works, as some of Lin-Manuel Miranda's past works. Even the way they were articulated on screen, I just felt that the pacing of this movie was a little bit much at times, especially for such an insular story. So it is a kinder than assumed 2.5 out of 4 stars for me. It's a kinder than assumed 2.5 out of 4 stars. Andrew Garfield, though, again, a guy I hope to see recognized this award season, if nothing else, or at least by the broader spectrum. The guy, I'll tell you, I did not expect to be personally attacked, and I don't want to get into this too much, but a couple days after I watched Tick, Tick, Boom, I was on Twitter. I allow myself like 5 minutes of Twitter a day, and that's it. But no, this was a good thing, not a really, lift your spirits type of thing, but a good thing was that, like, I saw an interview with Andrew Garfield on Jimmy Kimmel for about 5 minutes. And he talked about how his mother died recently of cancer. And he talked about grieving and the grieving process. And again, hits a little close to home with me. I lost my mother in August. And he talked about how he's like, I don't want to stop grieving because grieving is a love that refuses to die.
Right.
And I almost don't want to go too much in. I get a little choked up talking about it because it's not something like, that was like, I expected to see in the way it hit me, but like, damn it, man. Like, no, it was, I like Andrew Garfield a lot. I always have. I think he's a very studious actor. I think he's a very studious person. And I think he's a very accomplished actor. And my God, can he sing? That's the thing that I really love about this movie. The thing I can't stress enough is that he can sing. And that's the crowning point of Tick, Tick, Boom.
His entry level to Broadway stuff is freaking Tick, Tick, Boom. Out of all,
I know.
That's not training wheel shit, man.
Playing the Godfather of, like, again, who you said inspired this generation really of playwrights is unbelievable. And he
Dear
nailed
Evan
it.
Hansen inspired the works of Dear, like jokes aside, like the music of Dear Evan Hansen, you could go straight back to Jonathan Larson's kind of half rock, half musical style there. It's so clear, such a clear thread.
And the guy didn't live to see it for as much as he struggled.
He didn't get to live to see Dear Evan Hansen on screen, so we're good.
He's trying to make a really serious point here.
Sorry.
I end with this. Fair applies to Ferris wheels and funnel cakes, not life. That is our show on this Wednesday evening. Great show. Just the two of us without our better third, 3 legs of a tripod over here. Joe, hopefully be back next Wednesday. We're reviewing House of Gucci. Ooh. And I got to talk to Joe. I wonder if he can intro our show. We're probably going to get copyright flagged, so we probably can't. But I'd love to intro our show on YouTube with Gucci Gang by Lil Pump. I would love to, or at least some Gucci Mane, some Icy, because, that's what I did. I saw House of Gucci the night before Thanksgiving and I drove home and I played like 4 Gucci Mane songs in a row. That was my contribution.
Oh my God.
I was in the mood. And we're going to talk about House of Gucci though, next week on the show. And then the following week, I believe, is West Side Story, along with our favorite Christmas movies. So we do have a handful of things coming up. We got 2 more shows before our Christmas break. And then really, less than 40 days till the new year. Where does time go? When you find out, let me know. Joe will be back next week. Fingers crossed. This is Sleepless with Steve. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time, coast to coast, border to border. Dominic, I want to thank you again for pushing the button, sliding the sliders, making sure we are on air in living color tonight. And we'll be back next week, review of House of Gucci. And we're touching on that, what appears to be, even though it's only been out for like 6 hours, controversial Alec Baldwin interview with New York Times regarding the Rush shooting. We'll have some opinions on that. We're going to open with that on next week's show. This has been Sleepless with Steve. Highlights are posted on this YouTube channel as well as stevepulaski.com. We'll be back next week. Until then, for Joe Viso, who is absent, Dominic Guanzon in the trademark blue polo, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.